The Man Behind the Tree. So it was Halloween, and me and three others were af- were after been drinking in an abandoned warehouse about 20 minutes of outside of town. It was a fun night, the drinking, joking, and scary stories uh, put the crap up people's. Uh, I am generally not easily scared, but one story caught my attention. Uh, was that a pedophile was moved back into town and was lying near the park, and I had to walk through to get home. It was all the gossip in town, but details of what he done sent shivers down my spine. Jump forward to 3 a.m. We decided to call it a night. I had totally forgotten about the story and was moving with the wind and minding my own business. I lived the furthest away from the town and was the final friend to break off home. I finally stumbled into the entrance of the parks uh, and began to walk home. I am the type of person who usually walks with my head at a slight downwards angle. I look at the ground to make sure I don't step in dog poop. I don't know what possessed me to look up, but I did. I caught a glimpse of what I thought was a person being one of the trees. Uh, I second guessed myself since I looked again, and lo and behold, there was a man behind the tree staring at me. I froze for a split second, then just processed what the f was going on, and then it hit me that man could be the pedophile and that I was living in town. Uh, I turned around and made a crazy quick dash back the way I came. Oh, I forgot to mention that he was 30 feet away. As I was running, I looked back and saw him running after me. My heart was pounding and my knees were shaking more than they ever had in my entire life. I could not stop running. I finally made it to the road and flagged down a car. I told them what happened and they waited around while I called the police. The man in question was nowhere to be seen. After that night, I decided to never drink outside, and if did, then I paid for a taxi straight to my house. After I finished typing this, shivers were all over my body, and tears nearly came through at the fear I felt that day. So, in spirit of the sub, let's not meet again. Be careful who you open the door to. This incident happened to me last year on Halloween. My little brother and I were home alone since our parents had gone out for a Halloween party. They had uh, asked us while handing out candy to trick or treaters. That bummed my brother and I out because we had made plans to go trick or treating with a few friends. Our parents told us that we were too old to still be trick or treating and that we could instead invite our friends over to the house and hang out there. My friends declined my invitation to come over because they still wanted to go trick or treating. So that left me home alone with my brother handing out candy. A lot of people stopped by our house at 10 o'clock. Almost all the candy was gone. My brother and I decided that we would eat the rest. We were sitting on the couch watching a scary movie, stuffing ourselves with candy, when there was a knock at the door. I stormed off the couch, wondering who the H would be at knocking on the door at this late. I assumed that it was just some late trick-or-treaters. Even if that case, I had turned off the porch light and Halloween decorations off, which should have been a dead giveaway that we're out of candy or that we weren't home. So I assumed it was my parents. Being cautious, I looked through the peephole and saw a suspicious man standing on our front porch. He was wearing a black hoodie and a hood over his head, which made it difficult to see his face. The only detail on his face I could spot that he had a beard and dry, crispy lips. There was no way that this guy was a trick-or-treater because he wasn't wearing a costume and was too old to be trick-or-treating alone. His hands were stuffed in the front pocket of his hoodie. He also looked very thin. Even or every single red flag went off in my head about this guy. There was no way an H that was going to open the door. Still looking through the peephole, I watched as he knocked on the door again. He seemed desperate for us to open the door, and I was shaking a bit. It wasn't cold outside, definitely not cold enough for someone to be trembling. He was giving me a bad vibe, and I wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. "We're out of candy," I shouted to him. I watched a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile either. "Are you alone in there?" the man asked, almost in a mocking voice, his voice raspy and dry. "Should I call the police?" my little brother asked me quietly, gripping his cell phone. The man let out a grumble and said, "Sounds like you're not alone in there." Continued to watch him through the peephole. His hands were still wedged tightly in his pocket, and he was still speaking a bit. I began to wonder if he was armed. I decided to take action and spoke to him in the most intimidating voice I could. "Get the F away from my house or I'll call the police," I shouted. Uh, his smile faded and he bared his teeth. His teeth were piss yellow and concluded that he would probably some homeless crackhead. He had a look on his furry, plastered face. Fortunately, he left without trying to break in. Probably because he knew I wasn't effing around with him. I didn't stop watching him though, through the people, until I saw him completely off our property. My brother and I uh, breathed a sigh of relief, and I decided not to call the police. My brother and I were a bit paranoid after this and watched TV until our parents came home. We didn't tell them about the man since he hadn't really tried to harm us. Now, when I was back to this, I wish that I called police because maybe he would have been able to prevent murder. You see, the next day we found out that an elderly woman who lived next door to us from us had been brutally murdered. Uh, Her neighbor found her laying in front of the porch covered in blood. She had just been stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck. My brother and I immediately knew who had done it, and we told the police what we knew. They couldn't do much from the information, but we had given them Since we hadn't seen many details of the his face, they went on the hunt for the man, but never caught him. I blame myself for that poor old lady's murder because I could have prevented it from happening just calling the police. I think the most disturbing thing of all is the fact that we didn't take anything from the old lady's house. Her house had been left untouched, but he could have gone in and taken whatever he wanted since her door was wide open. This means that he just wanted to kill. Uh, that was the only intention. He didn't want money or jewelry. He only had the urge to murder. So, to the creepy crackhead Halloween slasher, let's not meet. Creepy Halloween stalker. Halloween has unfortunately never been a big deal out here in Scotland, and that's always bummed me out because I love Halloween. But after this year, I think I'll be happy never celebrating it again. My street and the next street over have a lot of young kids who get go out trick or treating. So while I was out shopping all day with my mom, we decided to pick up some sweets in case anyone came to our door. I had plans to go to cinema to see a Ouija with my boyfriend. So when I got home, I was getting myself ready to go out, and my mom was busy putting the shopping away. So when the first load of kids came to the door, I was the one who had to answer it. Uh, there were children from our street and the next street over, and some I couldn't recognize as well. As an adult, at the end of the path, I guessed either a father or older brother by their size, and they were dressed in all black and had some sort of mask covering their face, but it wasn't anything I recognized from a movie or anything. Anyway, uh, they all told me their jokes and gave them their treats, and I gave them their treats, and they made their way back down the path onto the next house. I was about to close the door when I noticed the guy with the kids was still standing at the end of my path. He hadn't noticed, and he wasn't watching the children either. He was looking right at me, and my skin started to crawl when I realized that he was just staring at me. I backed slowly into the house and watched him as he raised his hand and waved slowly at me. And I was about to call out to him when my mom came to the door and made sure I was all right, and he took off the opposite way from the children. He hadn't been with them at all, and he left as soon as he realized that I wasn't home alone. Uh, I completely freaked out and told my boyfriend all about it. When he came to the house to pick me up, I quickly forgot about the whole situation when we were watching the movie. When I finally got home, it was really late, and trick or treating was well truly over around here. When I got inside, my mom was getting ready to take the dogs out for a walk so that they would do their last minute business and they would meet my dad on his way home from work. So I was going to be home alone after my horrible encounter. I don't really like being home alone, but it's the worst Halloween and it has always been. Anyway, I was home alone. I grabbed some snacks and went to my bedroom. Onto my computer so that I could do some of my writing, scroll through Tumblr, and listen to music. After my first creepy encounter with the guy coming into my house and into my backyard, my dad brought a motion sensor light and attached it to the wall of our house, right outside my window. Normally, it would go off whenever a cat walks along our fence, but it will usually go off after a couple of minutes. I always know when the light has come on because it lights up my whole room, given uh, where it's placed. And while I was sitting at my computer, the light came on. I ignored it at first because I knew it would go off soon. but 5 minutes passed and I still hadn't gone off. So I opened my blinds to have a look outside and see what's going on. My stomach almost fell out of my butt when I looked out and saw the creep from hours before sitting on the fence, waving at my window to keep the light on. His waving slowed down suddenly when he spotted me, and it was all seriously creepy again, and I didn't know what to do. I got flashbacks from before. Luckily, I heard the front door open and my parents come into the house with the dogs. So I rushed down the stairs and started screaming at them that the guy on the fence. My dad hadn't questioned me. He just took the dogs and rushed through the house, through the back door, and ran outside. And then I heard him shouting, "Get the F out of here, you creep. I'm going to phone the police." My dad scared him off, but I'm convinced him not to call the police because I didn't want to relive that whole thing again. I just wanted to go to sleep and forget about the whole thing. So to the creepy guy in the mask waving at me, let's never meet again. This is not a horror movie. About 2 years ago on Halloween, my friends got a party bus. I really wanted to hand out candy to the kids. This has nothing to do with the story, but where I grew up, we lived way out in the country and never got to trick or treaters. So I really wanted to give out candy. Uh, because I was handing out candy, I didn't meet up with any of my friends. I went to the bar and there were at and got the bus there. Uh, we go from the bar to a bar from Antwile while closing time, and my friend says I could ride back to her house uh, to spend the night, and she'll take me to my car in the morning. But I had only had one several beer per hour, uh, and I knew I was okay to drive. And the bar we were at was only about 5 blocks from my car, so I decided to hoof it on my own. Something I normally never do, but I felt pretty brave in my superhero costume. Alright, it was actually a medieval winch costume, but I still felt very heroic. Uh, I headed off on my own, and as she stepped on the bus, she called out for me to watch out for weirdos. I laughed and kept going, but the blocks past, I realized that the street that had been crowded with costume revealers before was completely empty. I packed my cloak uh, tighter around me and started moving a little faster. It was very well lit with street lamps, and I was passing a bright family door sign that said, when I saw a flippin' clown down the end of a street block heading towards me. We were definitely going to pass each other unless I wanted to cross the street, then cross back again because my car was right around the corner. It was late and Halloween, so I figured whatever and keep going. The clown, however, sees that there's no one around and I'm a girl, so he starts laughing and dancing towards me, but I'm stubborn and I decide to stay on the closest path to my car, and that's it. He gets closer to, and I'm a little more nervous, uh, but I remind myself that it's not a horror movie. He finally reaches me and stays in my path. I stop and stare him down. He laughs again and twirls around me in a little dance. then keeps going. I keep an eye on him, but he just keeps on drunkenly dancing and laughing as I got to my car and drove away. That's a that's as close to being as a horror movie setting as I ever want to be. Halloween Creeper. Note I am a female, and when I was about 7 years old when this happened, my sister about 5. One day, sometime in October before Halloween, we were outside playing right by the front porch. My mom makes these awesome homemade ghost decorations to hang out in the trees, and as we were on big on holidays in my family, the yard was pretty heavily decorated. This man pulls up to our yard driving really slowly and comes to stop in front of our house. My sister, being the naturally suspicious one, backed up slowly till she was standing on our steps and she just kind of watched him. Uh, I, being the more naive and trusting one, stepped forward with to see what he wanted, and I looked over him, and he was appeared to be a grandpa, probably in his 70s, uh, with white hair and glasses. I judged him to be safe enough. He sat there for a minute as he was looking over our yard through the retrospective. He probably looking more at us. He started talking to me. Well, he was speaking fairly quietly, considered I am a good 20 to 30 feet away, so I stepped a little closer. He kept talking, and it seemed like every time I'd get closer, he'd lower his voice, and in turn, I scoot closer. This went on until I was 5 feet from his door. Finally, I could hear what he was saying. He was telling me how spooky our yard looked and what pretty girls we were. At this point, my sister realized something was off, and I still had no idea. And she sprinted inside, screaming for my mom. The minute my mom came out of the porch, he took off. I didn't realize until that moment something wasn't right. I'm super grateful for my sister at that age was smarter and more suspicious than me.